Hello, my loves. Welcome to another episode of the Becoming You podcast. Today, I have a really hard hitting episode for you where I'm going to be calling you out. And for some of you listening, this might be a really uncomfortable, I want to say conversation, uncomfortable podcast episode to listen to. So, we're going to be talking about 5 reasons why your parenting strategies are not currently working. Now, I'm talking to specifically you if you have been reading for a while, listening to lots of podcasts about how to just have a more peaceful, harmonious relationship with your child or kiddos. If you've started to realize, my parenting is not effective, there's a lot of fights and yelling and nagging, or I feel disrespected, we are disconnected in terms of how close we feel. Like if I keep going the way I am in terms of how I talk and treat my child, I'm really worried that, they're not going to come to me. If they're ever in trouble or I just don't have the type of relationship where my child is going to feel safe and close to come and talk to me about everything, right? I get so many parents saying, I just want to make sure that my child knows that they can come to me with anything, that, mom and dad are safe people to come to. I want to be the first point of call, even when, God forbid, they ever get into trouble or something's going on at school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to build that kind of relationship, it starts today. It starts today, whether you have a 6-month-old or a 3-year-old or a 13-year-old. It doesn't matter where and how old your kids are, not where your kids are. It doesn't matter where in the parenting journey you are and how old your kids are. How you parent needs to start changing today if you desire to have a peaceful, deeply connected relationship with your child and if you want to stop yelling. So you might be saying, but Visa, I'm doing all the things. I'm reading the books and I am trying to implement, some strategies and techniques, but it just nothing seems to be working. If that's you and you're listening, this episode is for you. So buckle up, buttercup. Okay. Number one reason that, and this is not in order of priority or importance. I've just made a list, by the way. So the first reason that your parenting strategy isn't working is because oftentimes you are not parenting the child you have. Instead, you are parenting the child you wish you had. A lot of times we stick our heads in the sand about who our child is, right? If they are defiant, or if they are showing behavior traits and patterns that we are shocked by. Like, I never behaved that way growing up. Like, why aren't you, listening to me? If I ever, talked to my dad that way, like I would have gotten smacked around the behind. I'm not going to smack you, but you ought to listen to me. So oftentimes we are trying to parent the child we wish we had. So that means keep repeating yourself, hoping that your child is going to listen to you, and this time it's going to be different. The fact of the matter is, you need to admit that my parenting strategies have not been working. It's not effective for my child. So my delivery is not working for my child. All the feedback and the constructive criticism I'm giving is not working for my child. The way I've been parenting is not working for my child. So what needs to happen is that you cannot keep wishing and hoping that your child is magically going to change somehow. Just one day they're going to wake up and miraculously listen to you. You need to admit that I am the problem here, right? And I keep using these techniques and these techniques are not effective. I pause there because we have to admit that, some children tend to receive advice, explanations, tend to work. But you have been blessed with a child where maybe your parenting techniques work for one child and it's not working for the other. And trying to be equal and parent, the different children in the same way, you're doing them a disadvantage. Now, I have 2 very different children. And for a long time, I was trying to parent them using the same techniques. Like for my oldest, explaining things calmly, he would oblige and kind of be flexible. So I just kept applying that same sort of parenting to my other child. and it would always backfire. It would set him off. It would lead to behavior that was very concerning and worrying. So I had to have a wake up moment where I realized, oh my gosh, I cannot parent this child hoping that he listens better, right? Like I have to learn new skills so that I can get through to him in an effective way. So a lot of times I think we grieve. Maybe you don't notice it on a conscious level, but we are really sad that we didn't get the type of child that we wanted. Now that can be really hard to hear, right? We all want for children that are easy, that are confident, that are academically oriented. Like we have this general idea of what parenting was going to be like when we have kids, and then we get the kids that we were blessed with. And then we're kind of shocked that it wasn't what we were expecting, that we have, a personality in our hands that we're trying to make sense of. And we expect our kids to be very much like us and have the same values as us. And you might be really challenged that they're not. So my hard hitting number one fact that the reason your parenting strategy isn't working is because you might be using a parenting strategy for the child you wish you had instead of using a parenting strategy that is appropriate for the child you do have. So that might mean you have a child who is highly sensitive to being disciplined harshly, right? So you might wish that harsh disciplining would work for your child, but if your child becomes more defiant and more aggressive when you are being harsh with them, then stop using that technique. It's not working, right? That is what I mean by learn to parent the child you do have instead of wishing for the one you don't have. Okay, reason number 2, it might not be working, your parenting strategy, is because you feel overwhelmed by the amount of conflicting information out there. Now, there is a lot of parenting styles, right? There's authoritarian. I'm not going to list them all. There is like permissive parenting. There is, conscious parenting. Parenting is on a spectrum, right? I would say authoritarian or rigid parenting is like one end of the extreme where it's like my way or the highway. If that's you, like, I don't think you'd even be listening to this podcast. All right. Or maybe that's been you and you're realizing that it's not working. And then the other end of the spectrum is like complete permissive parenting where there's really no boundaries. You're letting your child lead you in how they need to be parented. And that might feel really chaotic as well. So, parenting is a spectrum, and you might have read and perused all different kinds of parenting. And maybe you feel really overwhelmed because so much of it just feels really confusing and conflicting. And that's normal, right? All of us, I think, go through that stage sometimes because when what we're currently doing and the default parenting methods that we have, when they're not working, we start to look for other solutions. And we might be confronted with strategies and techniques that really challenge us, that challenge our norms, challenge our assumptions, challenge our beliefs. And so you might be picking parts of parenting techniques and strategies from different parenting styles, right? And then you might be wondering, why is this not working? First, you need to get clear on what are my values and what is the type of parent I want to be. Without getting clear on who you are and the type of relationship that you want to have with your child, no parenting technique is going to work. So the reason you feel overwhelmed is because everything to you sounds correct or incorrect. Everything sounds ideal. There are parts of all parenting techniques that sound really appealing to you. So you're starting from the external and coming internal. What we want to do is get clear on who you are first, like what is the type of life I want to have with my child? And then we want to design your parenting from that point. So really get clear on your values, right? If your value is time and I need to listen and I need my child to listen right away, then, then more of an authoritarian parenting style might be perfect for you. But if your value first and foremost is like, I want to have harmony and I want my child to have confidence. So harmony might be a value to you, confidence might be a value to you. Then your parenting style is going to be a trickle down effect of those values. Okay. Number three is you are not focusing on your mindset, your thoughts, and your belief system. And instead, you're just grabbing at parenting strategies and techniques. I am completely guilty of this. And the reason you do that, instead of focusing on what are my mindset, where is my belief, where is my mental state, where's my emotional state at, I talk a lot about healing your emotional wounds on this podcast and why that is so important to parenting. If you don't do that internal work first, then no parenting strategy is going to stick. Because how you implement those strategies, whether you're consistent or not, what you do when things start to, go wrong, or when you face challenges or it feels really hard to keep going in implementing these strategies, all of that is going to be affected by the mindset that you have. If you don't believe that change is possible for you, that it's the kind of future and vision you have for your family and relationships is possible for you, then it's going to be really hard to stick and implement parenting strategies. And, this is talked a lot about. I'm going to use like a business analogy. Think about when you are taking any kind of action towards a goal. Okay. So that might be maybe you want to complete a marathon and you're training for that. Or maybe you are going for a promotion at work and you're going for that, right? No matter what goal you set, you first have to have some belief that what you are going for is possible, right? And you have to keep reassessing, like when you are training for a marathon, let's say, and you are set back by a challenge, maybe you have like a minor injury, right? How you overcome that setback is determined by whether or not you've made a decision to run that marathon. If you're in the mindset of, I hope I get to run a marathon, then you're going to let that injury set you back. But if you decide that you're going to run that marathon, you are going to do everything in your power to overcome that injury, heal that injury, get the help you need, get the right nutrition to complete that marathon. That is what sets aside a change maker from somebody who's just wishing and hoping for change. So most people go straight into action mode without spending enough time on what are my assumptions that I need to work on? What are the beliefs that I need to work on? What is my emotional state when I think about it? Have I made a decision, or am I hoping, or am I living in hope and wish land, right? Everybody consciously wants to achieve a certain vision, but they hardly ever do an audit of what are the mindset blocks that are in the way of me believing that I can achieve that. And the same applies to parenting. Consciously, you want a relation, like a really deep, close relationship, a healthy relationship with your child, but you probably have not audited, like, what are the mindset beliefs or the mindset blocks that I have that stop me from being consistent with all the tools and strategies that I'm trying to apply. Okay. Because you need to be the change in your family. You cannot wait for your spouse to be ready with you. If you decide that you want things to change, you have to be the leader. And in the beginning, your child is not going to respond to the changes that you are making. It is going to be hard. It will feel like you are screaming into an empty room, and no one's hearing you, right? When you are feeling that way, no wonder, like, it becomes very easy to start blaming the parenting technique for not working. It's because you don't have a good foundation in place. And the foundation being, what are my values? What is the vision I'm working towards? Am I parenting from a place of feeling good about myself, or am I parenting from a place of feeling like kind of not very confident and I don't really feel or like the person that I am? If you don't like who you are, I guarantee you no parenting strategy is going to work. Okay. And if you are confused as to why that is, go back and listen to some of my previous episodes where I talk a lot about why healing yourself emotionally and your emotional wounds is the gateway to stop yelling at your child and to start having a great relationship. So, and oftentimes we go straight to strategies and techniques. Just tell me what to do, right? When just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And that often means that you are looking for a very quick fix and you're not interested in the long-term solution. And parenting strategies only work if you are interested in the long-term solution. Parenting strategy, for me, has been a result of doing the emotional work because I am clear on who I am, what my values are, what my triggers are, what my wounds are. And so I'm able to very clearly see like where oftentimes when our children are not listening and we feel disrespected and we start yelling at them, it's not because of their behavior, though often we tell ourselves it is. It is often our wounds are triggered by their behavior. And so we yell at them to try and get control of their behavior so that we stop hurting. Okay. And so this is why the foundational work is so important, because when you realize, oh, this is an emotional wound of mine, I'm being triggered right now. When you have that level of awareness, you have a strong foundation in place. And so instead of reacting, you start to separate where does my wounds and where is my child's like action start to merge, right? And oftentimes there's a lot of enmeshment. You don't know where you end and your child begins. And that's why we end up trying to control their behavior. But if your child's having a meltdown, right, and you know, my child is not trying to disrespect me, my child is actually having a hard time listening to my instructions, that is emotional awareness because you've emotionally healed yourself and you stop taking everything personally, right? Or if your child's having a meltdown and you're going to be late for somewhere, and in that moment, instead of rushing them, you actually realize, oh, my child actually really needs, and this is a cry for help. I'm going to put my own like fear of what will people think of me if I'm late or what will happen if I miss this appointment. I'm going to put that fear aside and instead meet my child in the present moment, right? That is what I mean by working on your mindset and your beliefs and your assumptions and healing your emotional wounds. Because otherwise, any parenting strategy that you get either from me by listening to this podcast or books that you read is not going to work. Number 4, you don't have any accountability, feedback, or support when you're implementing these parenting strategies. Oftentimes it feels like you're just haphazardly grabbing things and throwing stuff at the wall or throwing it, implementing things without really any thought into why am I implementing this? And when things are not working, there is no feedback loop, right? There's no person telling you, like having a 30,000 level view of what it is that you're doing to give you feedback on this needs to be changed, or your mindset is what is getting in the way right now, or you're almost there to accomplishing this step that you're in of your parenting journey. Like, let's keep going. Oftentimes my clients, I do give my clients parenting strategies, but almost all of the time, a lot of it we spend on focusing on what is working. And that then gives them the motivation and the confidence to keep implementing other things. And so, or if something doesn't seem to be working, then they have me to give them feedback on what are some things that we could change, right? Trying to come up with an example of, I was just talking to a client recently, and she was talking about how she really, really struggles to get her child to do a certain thing that is part of their daily routine. And there's usually physical force being applied. I'm not talking about slapping or smacking, by the way. Like physically forcing the child to comb their hair. It could be something like that. So she was like, and that doesn't really make me feel good. So we started kind of pulling back on what is exactly happening in that situation. And it wasn't what I initially thought was the issue. It was actually something really, really simple. And we came up with a very quick change that she could implement. to see whether that particular daily expectation for her child could be done with much less drama and without my client feeling so exhausted and without her child feeling so out of control. So when you don't have somebody to support you like that, you can feel so lost, and a problem that's actually really simple and solvable can feel overcomplicated and overwhelming to you. So what I would recommend, if you are really struggling in any area of your life, find support. Find support, find a community so that you can get feedback. And most importantly, you have accountability. Most people don't manage to make any changes in their life, not because they lack information, but it's because they lack accountability. There's nobody holding them to their promise of, I want to change. I am going to take these actions consistently. When you bring on board somebody to help you hold you accountable, it is incredible how you show up for yourself. You drop the excuses. You stop blaming the strategy for it not working. You take responsibility, right? If something's not working, you ask for help. You put your hand up and you go, I am really struggling with this. Can you help me make sense of it? Or can you help me customize or design it or gamify it in a way that I will show up, right? This is what you are paying for. You're not paying for the information. You are paying for the information to make a change in your life. All right. So the last one is that you don't have a consistent strategy. You are piecemealing bits of information, hoping to make it into a cohesive strategy, right? Which now means like you read all of these things from this book and that podcast and this article that you read. It all sounds so great, but it's like, I don't know how to put it all together and where does one fit in with the other, right? It's like having 5 different recipes for a cake. And instead of following just one simple recipe, you try to mishmash 5 different recipes together because they all sound so good. And now you have a mess of a cake that doesn't taste very good, right? That's like the easiest metaphor that came to me. So it's actually, things will work better if you simplify it. But oftentimes, if you're working by yourselves, you're so scared of getting it wrong or missing out on something that you tend to throw in everything and the kitchen sink to make things work. We are scared of simplifying things because we are worried about missing something and getting it wrong. But when in fact, simplification and having a step-by-step process is what is going to be most effective, because that is a strategy, right? When you have a flowing system and a step-by-step system with a clear result at the end, that means you have a strategy and not a hope or a wish. Because that then tells you where to prioritize your energy, your time, and your focus, right? When it comes to changing your child's behavior. So this is a plug for something that I am working on. So we've talked about having accountability, support, consistent strategy, and, working on your mindset. I know that these are all the key pieces to making lasting changes in your parenting type and style and strategy so that you get to your final vision of having that relationship that you deeply desire with your child. So what is this shameless plug about? I am in the process of creating an incredible community that is going to be free. It's going to be free, that is going to give you the community and the support and, support from me and support from the community itself. Because one of the things that make a big change in any transformation is hearing other people's stories of how they too are going through the same thing and how they have overcome the thing that you are in the midst of. I cannot tell you how valuable hearing other people who are in the same boat as you share their journey and what's been working, what's not working, and a lot of times their challenges and setbacks. Anytime I hear that someone's going through something really tough that I have gone through myself, or I hear in the future, right? I, I, I recollect things from the past and I was like, man, that person has gone through it too. It actually is more helpful to share struggles with other people than just to hear a solution. What I mean by that is, I'm an autoimmune warrior, and it really helps to have a community where we all talk about what it is that we struggle with on a daily lifestyle basis. And it doesn't actually get you down, it lifts you up because you see the ingenious ways like people solve their problems or their mindset on how they overcome it and how they reframe it and how they keep going, right? Or you feel deep, deep empathy for other people who feel like they're worse off than you, and it makes you appreciate where you're at. So, for all of these different reasons, a community is essential to transformation. You cannot do this alone. And I wouldn't want you to do it alone because it's so much more enjoyable when you do it with other people. So, for this reason, I am creating the Grounded Parent Community. It is coming soon. It is going to have incredible resources for you with monthly Q&A calls, where I'm going to be answering parenting questions. There's going to be a private podcast. And it's if you want to join, of course, I'm going to be dropping the details very soon once all the resources are there. So there's going to be free breast work in there. And as time goes on, I'm going to be adding more and more and more things. So if this is something that you would love to be a part of so that you can have results like you stop yelling at your child finally, then keep listening to this podcast. And when the community is open, of course, you're going to get an invitation. And I look forward to seeing you in there. But in the meantime, if you are ready to begin your own grounded parenting journey, I want you to book a call with me today. It's a free consultation call. We will go deep into, what are the struggles that you face when it comes to parenting? What is your desired vision, right? And once we get those two, then I'm going to help you figure out what's stopping you from getting there. Okay. And if that's something that you want, click the link in the show notes and book that call today. Do not wait. Remember what I said at the beginning of the podcast. The time for change is now. Stop waiting, stop hoping, stop wishing. You need to lead the change. All right. I love you guys so much. Take care.